What's going on, Dan K Show fans? We are here with a man who authored one of my favorite hockey fandom moments and one of my least favorite. The favorite, a fake Yager salute at an outdoor game in front of all the Philly faithful while Dan K was working for the Flyers organization. Had to not cheer too loud there. And on the other side of it, a dominating Game 7 performance to win a cup for the New Jersey Devils. Mike Rupp is in the building with us. Mike, reintroduce you in, and I got to ask you, last night's game one, Edmonton drops 1-3-0. Bobrovsky looks good. What's the take from it?
It was a weird game. Part of me feels like Edmonton has shown that they can compete with these guys. I don't know how many people didn't think that they would be able to compete. The Florida Panthers have been a bit of a buzzsaw. Like they've been kind of cruising, right? And so you thought it was going to be trouble, and it didn't look to be trouble as far as gameplay. So I think there's some positives there from the Edmonton standpoint, but then there's part of it for me too. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, was that the game they had to have? Like I put it this way, I don't envision there being another game in this series, regardless of who wins, that is going to look like that. Like Edmonton is not going to control a game like that. So part of me, and I'm trying not to be negative in that standpoint, is that the missed chance for Edmonton, right? To really grab a hold of a game when they deserved it. And if anything, is that like the Florida Panthers being like, we won a game we had no business winning. We know we've got better. I expect them to be a lot better in game two. And we'll see. I mean, Edmonton's going to even have to find another level. But it was a strange game, very exciting, huge saves by Bobrovsky. I think it's going to be a great series, but it was just a kind of a strange game one, the way it went.
Yeah, and I guess the question, 6 shots on net from McDavid in a game. You can't ask for much more than that. You outshoot him 32-18. I was told once shots on goals it's a loser stat right there. You don't talk about it when you win. What can you do more if you're Edmonton? You saw him start getting to the net front yesterday. You saw him start getting physical. What can you do to get inside Bobrovsky's head there and start putting pucks behind him?
And they know this. The Edmonton Oilers, anybody that's played against Sergei Bobrovsky knows that he's lights out down low. In the lower parts of the net, he's incredible. You got to get the puck up on him. They kind of had a tough time doing it. I mean, Edmonton had a bunch of half breakaways in the game. So that's good, right? It showed that Florida was having a tough time with their speed and their stretch passes. But when the Edmonton players would get in tight on him, they're trying to slide it around his pad down low. So if you get it up on Sergei Bobrovsky, you're at least giving yourself a fighter's chance. I think that's not to say he's weak up there. It's just his most vulnerable area is going to be above his waist and up in the top parts of the net. So I look for that a little bit more from them. The only other thing I would probably say is Edmonton. Edmonton has to. They had a couple defensive lapses, right? Like they're pretty controllable things, I thought. The Sam Bennett pass to Evan Rodriguez. I mean, it's a one-handed pass from below the goal line. I just think it looked like a nothing play, and it was kind of treated as a nothing play, where this Stanley Cup Finals, and you got to be kind of on your toes for everything. And it felt like the Edmonton Oilers kind of fell asleep in front of their net for a second. Next thing you know, it's on Rodriguez's stick and in the back of the net. So, just a little bit of adjustments, but solving Sergei Bobrovsky and feeling confident doing that is probably number one for them.
Yeah, I mean, as two Rangers fans, Dan and I, two big Rangers fans who kind of lived and died with them this season, very familiar with Bobrovsky's game. It is not a surprise to see him kind of continue to perform at this level. And I just sit there watching the game last night thinking to myself, he can't keep getting away with it. And he just kind of does. And it's so much fun to watch Bobrovsky go to work.
It is. And, I also wonder too, and we get to obviously the NHL Network. We have Devin Dubnyk, Corey Schneider. We got a few goalies that we work with. And I was talking to Doobie about it during the game too. And it's like we know this in hockey. Sometimes goalies feeling the puck makes them play better. They're more invested in the game. They feel more involved in the game. And on the other side, like Stuart Skinner, he's had a couple games in the playoffs too where he hasn't had many shots against, right? And then you're kind of wondering, like, All right, I don't really pin those goals on Stuart Skinner yesterday. So, but Bobrovsky's kind of in that mode, and he's in that role right now, and he's going. And they won the game because of Sergei Bobrovsky last night. I don't think anybody would deny that. He's got that capability of doing that. Again, I think the Florida Panthers will be better, but he's in that mode. The last 2 years have been exceptionally better because he had a couple tough years there when he signed, right away in Florida, and it kind of felt like, oh, that contract's going to be bad. Well, it looks pretty darn good right now.
Yeah, and as as two Rangers fans, obviously, being in the New York area, we've had about a week now to really, look inward and kind of first stop being so sad about New York, but also to kind of look ahead towards next season. And I kind of wanted to get your advice on the Rangers specifically here. Do you think that there's a piece that exists for the Rangers next season to be able to overcome that last little bit and maybe get to the Stanley Cup? Is it one guy that needs to be moved off the team? Is it one guy or one type of player that needs to be able to be brought into the organization? What's your take on the Rangers?
So I love the build of their team. I think the build is great. I think what we've seen now a number of years in a row is it was a little bit of a concern of mine, and then it kind of reared its head again in these playoffs. I feel like the Rangers need an alpha dog is one of their top guys. They need a guy, they need a leader on that team who's one of the more, put it this way, the skilled guys on the team that I love, Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, they're awesome hockey players. I think you can win with them. I think they're huge pieces for this team. But I also think personality-wise, they need an alpha dog who's going to go in there and say the right thing, to be the right, to be the energy in certain moments when they need a boost. And it just feels like they in the playoffs hit this point where they'll need some sort of spark. And then it's like you kind of look around and you're waiting for it to happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that there's something that needs to happen there, because I've always said this about the Rangers, and if you let them play comfortable hockey for them, they will eat you up. You will have no chance. They will dominate. But if you make it hard on them, can they adjust? Can they find ways in other ways and kind of will themselves? And that's something that I just feel like they lack when you look at some of the other teams that are in the playoffs that have that, just, hey, we don't have our game right now, or the power play is not clicking right now, and kind of willing your team. That's an area that I feel like they have a hole as far as personality on their roster. You need a very diverse personality group. They got a lot of great guys, great players, but it's all the same personality, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. You got to find that, like you said, that spark, that the quintessential locker room guy. Everybody wants one, but feels like they're a little bit harder to find in practice than just in theory, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at Vinny Trocheck. He's probably the closest thing. He is that, and Vinny Trocheck was an absolute animal for this team. But it takes more than one guy. I think they need some more guys that are kind of, they could throw gasoline on the fire a little bit, and I think that's something they're lacking at times.
Tell you what, I was too much of a locker room guy, Lucas. That's how I ended up never. But Rob, I guess the last question we'll ask you, Mike, is we work with a lot of young athletes here. We're the number one show in junior hockey, we call ourselves, right? We talk to a lot of 16 to 21-year-old and unders that are trying to make it to the next level of the game, trying to work their way through this hockey world. Would you have any advice for Mike Rupp at the age of 16, at the age of 17, 18? What's something you'd go back and tell yourself today if you can go back?
You're always working on your skills, and you're working on thinking the game. That's big, and you got to have good, strong work ethic to do that. But be different. You got to locate what you work on, your weaknesses. There's something that you're always going to work on. You need to work on your weaknesses, but don't forget about your strengths. And I think that's something that nowadays it's like, hey, I need to work on this, and these are parts of my game that need to be better. But I also do this, I think, is good or better than anybody else. Keep that better than everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's something where you have to be able to separate yourself from other players, and you got to be well-rounded. But if you are if you're a good skater, don't just think, oh, I'm a good skater. Continue to be a great skater, right? Like I need to get better and better at that, or whatever your certain attribute is to your game. Just focus on your strengths too, and make sure you're being different. I think is the biggest thing, because you got to get noticed.
Awesome, Mike. Thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate your insight into the Stanley Cup and Rangers, and even some advice for the young people out there. We really appreciate it. And you can watch NHL Network analyst and Stanley Cup champion Mike Rupp on NHL Now and NHL Tonight before and after every Stanley Cup final game. And if the Florida Panthers keep playing like this, there might not be many more Stanley Cup games this season. Mike, thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thank you. Anytime. Enjoy.
Hey, thanks, Mike.